Hello, everybody. Welcome into the Apples and Ginos Fantasy Hockey Podcast. My name is Nate Groot-Nibelink. I'm the creator of Apples and Ginos, originator of the Zero-G draft strategy. And in this podcast, I'm going to go over the most puzzling players league-wide as submitted by the Apples and Ginos Discord server. Let's get it. All right, welcome on in, everybody. Sorry for being a few minutes later to start than I intended, but we're here. We've got a long list. The Discord server was particularly active today, giving lots of names of players that they're currently finding puzzling. And aren't we all with some of our teams? Some of the players that we expected to be studs and are not, and some players that we thought were nobodies that are carrying teams. So we'll dig in here. Let's get it started right off the top with Rasmus Dahlin. Rasmus Dahlin, 2 assists in the last 5 games here. Still skating over 24 minutes a night. 109th amongst all defensemen. Shots per 60 in that stretch. That's not great. The on-ice numbers are better. 27th in Corsi, 4 per 60. 35th in scoring chances, 4 per 60. So that's obviously a little bit better there. And I'm honestly just pretty unconcerned with Dahlin. We have a big enough sample size on this player. Like, my worst case scenario with Dahlin is that he is maybe just not quite as elite this season in particular as we were hoping. Maybe instead of returning like a second round value, he instead returns like, I don't know, a 5th round value or something. That is the extent of my concern with Dahlin. I don't think that it's likely. Yeah, I really have very little concern with Rasmus Dahlin. I consider him to be one of the bigger buy lows currently. I really just don't have a lot of concern. I don't know how else to say it. Really feel like Buffalo, as I mentioned in the show yesterday with Blake, that Buffalo in general is just much more likely to regress positively than negatively. Yeah, overall, I just can't find it in me to to be all that worried about what's going on there. So that's where I'm at with Rasmus Dahlin, with the Sabres in general. I'm going to do this for a second. I'm going to make a copy and I'm going to paste this over. We've been having some weird stuff going on with the sheets today, and I don't want to lose the numbers that I have in here. So I'm going to do that here, and hopefully we don't lose that. Something about the URL that I pull for this sheet from Natural Stat Trick has been updating weird. I've had to go in multiple times today and just update, like literally just change one character in the string of the URL and then change it back and then it goes. So I don't want to risk that there. But yeah, starting it off with Rasmus Dahlin, do consider him a buy low. I would buy low. I still am maintaining my early season projection on him. Michael's in here, says, Nate is the Dr. Fate of the fantasy hockey world. I see what you're doing there and I appreciate it. Steve says, curious to hear your thoughts on Ehlers. Time on ice is down, even with the productive season thus far. Are you worried holding trading? Yeah, I mean, obviously you're worried whenever there's not a lot of just sheer time on ice, but he has been very productive. I'm about as worried as I have been at any point, I guess, when rostering Ehlers. Yeah, maybe you can trade him high at this point, and you can get something really solid for him. I'm not gonna try to tell you not to do that. The problem with Ehlers is that he may always just get that deployment and then absolutely pop off, and you're kind of taking that risk if you do trade him away. But I don't think it's a bad time to at least investigate trading Ehlers away. Pete asks, when is Colton getting on the highlight reel to start the show? Yeah, pretty soon he's going to have a highlight reel long enough. We'll just play highlights of Ross Colton for the entire show, and that'll be the whole show. Toronto Dave is in here. Hashtag Zergy appreciates you. Steven says, I know it's early, but how are we feeling about Hofer getting the net over Binnington? Yeah, I don't think that's going to continue. They obviously have liked Binnington. They've gone back to him time and time again. He's played well in the last number of seasons. And so I just don't feel like they're all that likely, I guess, to move away. He's in year 4 of 6 of a $6 million contract, so they're going to be stuck with that for the next little bit anyway until 2027. And so I think that the best that we can realistically hope for with Hofer is that Hofer gets into a bit more of a timeshare 1A, 1B, maybe even a 50-50 split. But that's probably the absolute ceiling in terms of volume for Joel Hofer. I really like Hofer, and I do think that he would be probably one of the best Zero G candidates of the year if anything happened to Binnington. But I really don't anticipate him just completely unseating Binnington. Outside of Binnington just absolutely melting down, I don't see that happening. So that's where I'm at there. Michael says, went 0G. Just today, somebody dropped Allmark, and I dropped Kemper for him. Then somebody dropped Ryan Nugent-Hopkins. Then I picked him up and dropped Buchnevich. Thoughts, I couldn't believe it. That sounds kind of reasonable to me. Overall, yeah, I'd rather have Allmark than Kemper, I think. I think I'm there with that. Riddick's played well, so he might be able to take a little bit of net share from Kemper. And Allmark is the absolute clear number 1 in Ottawa. Nugent Hopkins versus Buchnevich. Yeah, I'm slightly towards Nugent Hopkins there, but I do think it's pretty close. Steven says, thanks for the insight. No problem. Let's get back to it. Gabriel Vilardi. Vilardi was on this list last week, heavily requested last week as well. 3 assists in his last 5 games, still getting 19 minutes a night. That deployment has not changed. He's been on the top line, been on the top power play the entire time. 351st in shots per 60 is the big problem here. 185th in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60. On-ice numbers are better, but not anything really to write home about. It's a tough spot for sure. I would love to see, even if the shots per 60 were like if they're just in like the 100s, then I could feel like some like decently about it, right? I could anticipate him coming back. Sorry, I just had to sneeze off the mic. I'm sure that was lovely for anybody watching. Gabriel Vilardi, yeah. 351st in shots per 60 is not going to cut it. That's the biggest worry with Vilardi right now. Why is he not shooting? Why is he not doing what he has done in the past, basically? That being said, I'm not going to drop Vilardi personally until he's off the top line or top power play. That's going to be kind of the signal to me. Otherwise, like 19 plus minutes, I just unless you're in, if you're in like a 10-team league, then absolutely like drop Vilardi, go find whoever else is out there, maybe like Chinakhov or something. You might be persuaded to go that route. That makes some sense to me. But in 12-team and higher leagues, I just don't know who you're picking up who's getting 19 minutes a night, power play 1, line 1, and has 30-goal potential like Vilardi does. That potential hasn't gone away. He's just not playing well. The worst-case scenario here is that there's some sort of injury that he's playing through, and that's what's actually limiting him. If that's not the case, then I do expect him to bounce back at least somewhat towards what we saw when he was healthy last year. NRF, can't wait to see what you have to say about EP40 and Stamkos. Just acquired him against Cutter Gauthier, Askarov, and McTavish and Edvinsson in a dynasty. Wow, that is a big trade for sure. Christopher says traded Vilardi for Nietzsche's today. Yeah, I think I might take Nietzsche's on the basis of what we've seen so far in the early going. Ledbang just completed Zib for Bouchard and Suzuki for Hyman. I love buy low season. Those are 2 monster trades. Love that for you. All right, back to it. Zach Hyman. Blake and I talked about Zach Hyman yesterday on the flagship show. So if you haven't already checked that one out, then you should go do that. I'm not going to rehash everything here, but basically I will reiterate Zach Hyman is the biggest buy low in fantasy hockey right now. On-ice stats are incredible. Single-digit individual scoring chance, 4/60 rank. 20 minutes a night, still playing on the top line, top power play. What's not to love? Absolutely, you should be trying to acquire Zach Hyman at any kind of discount right now. PB Stars just traded away Josh Norris for Stamkos. Wow, yeah, I would love to be able to do that. That would definitely feel pretty good. Jake DeBrusk next up here. 4 assists in 5 games, 17 minutes played. And he's in the 200s kind of across the board in terms of his shots rank, his on ice ranks. Nothing looks too good here with Jake DeBrusk, and they've been moving this thing around a lot. They have been trying all sorts of things with the forward lines. JT Miller is questionable or something. Oh no, here's what Thomas Drance said on Twitter. Tocchet says he'd hesitate to describe JT Miller as questionable for Tuesday night at Chicago. Club will see tomorrow if he's able to take draws. Tocchet wouldn't commit to Miller being in the lineup for sure, but read between the lines seems to be trending well. Yeah, I guess that's somewhat good. I don't know. The lines were DeBrusk with Suter and Besser. I'm kind of wondering if Suter is a placeholder there for Miller, assuming that Miller comes back. That would make the most sense since Miller often plays with Besser. And then, but DeBrusk is squarely on the second power play unit in practice as of today. So, yeah, still a good even strength spot, but not on the top power play. 17 minutes a night. Not been able to convert much into goals, but he's got 4 assists in the last 5 games. I guess I'm just kind of adopting a holding pattern here. These guys that move to new situations, you can't expect that they're just going to hit the ground running from the very first second. If you didn't think that there might be some growing pains, then I think you're probably fooling yourself a little bit. That should be a bit more of the norm, the normal expectation, I would say, for players changing scenery. It's great when it hits right away and you have no issues going to a new spot, but more likely you're going to have some growing pains. And in the meantime, he's given you 4 assists in 5 games. So I'm not too worried about it there. Teammate Elias Pettersson, just 2 assists in his last 5 games, 20 minutes average time on ice, 282nd shots per 60, 138 individual scoring chances, 4/60, 249 Corsi, 4/60, 178 on ice scoring chance, 4/60. Not good numbers for Pettersson by any stretch of the imagination. His line in practice today was Höglander and Garland. Yeah, I was listening to 32 Thoughts, and Elliot Friedman was talking about how he thinks that Pettersson is one of these guys who kind of internalizes all the pressures of a Canadian market and kind of reads what people are saying about him. And yeah, sometimes it gets in his own head, basically, to paraphrase. So I don't know what credence to give that from a guy like Elliot Friedman. I don't know what he's drawing that from exactly, but it is just a potential, I guess, explanation of what's going on here. That he might just be, yeah, having a real cold streak. He's in his own head a little bit here. But the fact that he's not able to generate anything is what's really of concern. Like, it'd be one thing if the points and the goals were just not going in for him, but the fact that he actually also is currently unable to generate is a bigger problem. That being said, I do think Pettersson gets back up there. As I've said before, I've never been truly high on Elias Pettersson. I'm not projected him for like the big 90 plus point seasons that some others have. I don't remember offhand. I think it was like 84 points was my projection for him this year. I can look it up, but I've never been one to have like some sort of outlandish projection on a guy like Elias Pettersson. And so I've not been as worried as some others, basically. Yeah, 84 points, 35 goals, 84 points was my projection for Pettersson at the start of the season. And yeah, that would be kind of my baseline expectation of what he'll do rest of the season as of now anyway. I don't really see that changing a whole lot. Yeah, it's a cold streak. Cold streaks are often magnified when they're right out of the gate this way. And I don't think that we're going to look back at the season and say, remember that cold streak for Pettersson that just lasted the entire season? I don't see that happening. He's too good a player for that. So that's where I'm at on Pettersson. Let's get back to some comments here. Michael asks, you catch any of the beginning of the Leafs game? That Tampa goal made me cry. I have not. No, I went straight from putting kids to bed to down here to start the podcast. So I have not seen anything. I haven't even checked the score, to be quite honest with you. What is the score? Let's see. This is great podcasting. 1-1. Nylander and Paul are the goal scorers. I have Nylander in the Patron League, so that's good for me. Max Domi I picked up in some spots, so getting the assist there, that feels good. All right. Not too bad. Not too bad. We'll take it. All right, let's keep rolling. Ledbang loves that trade that PB got Stamkos for Norris. Pete asks, what do you think about Eichel for Dahlin? I would prefer Eichel at the moment, I think. If you really want to get rid of a center only, then maybe you could get to it. If it's a Bangers Cats, then Dahlin has more value there, and then it might be closer. But Eichel starting out hot when I thought that he might start out hot is really causing me to get unreasonably high on Jack Eichel. Sebastian, I traded Marner and Wallman to a Toronto fan for pasta and chicken. I should feel good, right? Yes, you should feel amazing. Lenny, thoughts on Adam Boqvist? Whole bunch of nothing so far, especially time on ice. Still getting power play one deployment. Hold with a short leash or cut loose. Yeah, I think I would cut him loose for a lot of players out there right now. It's just not enough time on ice to make anything happen, even with the top power play. Yeah, right about I was right about him getting the top power play, but it turns out it's probably not going to matter because that's literally the only thing they're using him for. Obviously, it always depends on who you're able to pick up instead, but by and large, I think I'm pretty okay to go and check out whoever else is out there on your waiver wire and potentially go that direction. If there's anybody, if there's anybody reasonable out there, like probably Oliver Ekman-Larsson is already gone, but like Brandt Clark is out there in 67% of Yahoo leagues, I would go that route. I might even go Owen Power at this point over him. Philip Broberg, you could convince me, is a better option at this point, at least a shot to take. Jake Wallman, I would definitely take straight up. Yeah, there are names, basically, that I would take over Boqvist right now. GG Nathaniel, good morrow to thee. My acquaintance doth put forth a trade for my Marner for his Dahlin and Hayton in a points league. What say you? That's pretty close. Yeah, I think it would just matter if it actively does help your team. Like if you need Hayton, if Hayton will really help your team and it doesn't like just cause you to have a logjam of forwards or a logjam of centers, then I could see it. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. Marner and Dahlin feels like a bit of a wash, assuming that you don't need Marner's right wing. So that's really where it's at. If the positional eligibility is not going to hurt you too much, then you actually do want to get Hayton, like that'll actually be a net positive for your team, at least in the current moment, then I could see it. Yeah, it's more about the positional, what you need in terms of your positions than the value of the trade for me. Jordan asks, what do you think about Dahlin? I've seen stuff about sports hernia. Yeah, I just went over it. Unless I get something kind of validated, I'm just not gonna go off reports that have no I don't know what it's called, verification, I guess. Yeah, unless I see something that I can really hang my hat on, I'm not going to just kind of, I don't know what the word is. I'm not going to just like speculate and make any decisions for my fantasy teams based on based on speculation. I haven't seen anything. Somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, but I haven't seen anything that's actually saying that that's what Dahlin's dealing with or anything. Lenny said Drysdale's available. Might give him a go. Thanks. Good stuff there. Michael said, picked up Paul Cotter this morning for stream this week. Little did I know his deployment's different, much worse now. Hopefully it pans out. Not sure how I feel about it now. Yeah, you and Blake. Blake took him in the head-to-head streamer death match, so I'm sure he's feeling that one as well. What was the line that he ended up on here? Just so I can brag a little bit more. Looks like it was the fourth line, right? Cotter, Lazar, and Bastian. Yeah, that's a tough one. All right. Back to the players here. Jack Hughes, just 1 goal, 2 assists, 3 points in his last 5 games, skating over 20 minutes a night. It's really, really odd here. 29th in Corsi 4 per 60, 17th in on-ice scoring chances 4 per 60, but where he typically shines in the individual stats, he has been unable to do so far. 171st in shots per 60, 234th in individual scoring chances 4 per 60. That's concerning. It is concerning for a guy that's coming off a shoulder surgery. We saw, numerous other players. Brandon Montour last year is one that comes to mind. He didn't seem right after coming off, I believe it was shoulder surgery with Montour last year, right? That he came back from. Could be something similar for Jack Hughes where he's just not quite right. And so that's affecting his ability to shoot or to get to the spots to get the shots off. Maybe he's just playing a little bit timid. Who knows? But overall, it is affecting his production right now, and it is concerning. Would I make any big moves based off of that? No, I wouldn't, because Jack Hughes is one of those players who could pop for, 120 point pace the rest of the way. If that's what it is, if it is like a shoulder thing that's still kind of bugging him, or he's just kind of uncertain with it, and suddenly the light bulb turns on, he could absolutely just crush from here on out. I'm never going to trade that kind of player low. It sucks, yep, but I'm never going to trade that player low in that scenario. It would be worse to trade him low and to have him burn me than to deal with, some slightly reduced version of Jack Hughes where, I mean, he's not going to score at a 51-point pace all season long. Even if his shoulder was hanging by a thread, he would score at a better pace than that. So I'm not that worried about that. Miro Heiskanen, we talked about Heiskanen on the flagship show yesterday as well, so definitely go check that out for Blake's take as well. 25 minutes a night, none of that is changing, but the underlying stats are just okay. This is kind of who Heiskanen is. The underlying stats are never going to be like tremendous. And right now he's just having some bad puck luck to go along with that. Hasn't scored a point yet on the season. I would consider Heiskanen buy low, but probably the manager who drafted Heiskanen valued him a lot higher than I did in the draft. In all my drafts, Heiskanen went well before I was interested in drafting him. So now he's probably being valued by the manager that drafted him somewhere closer to where I'd actually value him. And so there might just not be any value for me to acquire him at a value that I think he can, sustain some production for the rest of the year. John Tavares, next up, 2 goals in his last 4 games that he's been a part of there. 16 and a half minutes. That's obviously not great, but what is great is the 14th in the league in individual scoring chances, 4 per 60 rank. That's a good number. The on-ice number, not so good. 216th Corsi, 4 per 60, 249th scoring chances, 4 per 60. The problem here is that the Leafs have, over the last number of games now, kind of committed to Domi as the 2C with Nylander, and Tavares is playing on the third line alongside, in this game, Pacioretty and Robertson. And so obviously that's going to hold him down. He's still in the top power play, so he's still going to get that. But yeah, if knowing what I know right now, I would actually go back and kind of adjust my priors on Tavares and probably knock down his projection a little bit. So yeah, I'm not saying that Tavares is going to go to 0, but I am baking in a little bit more of like the 60-point production range, whereas before I was pretty confident that he could get back to 70 plus. Let's go to Steven Stamkos here. Another one that Blake and I talked about on the flagship show, so definitely go check that out. Basically, the underlying stats here look tremendous for Steven Stamkos, but he's only got 1 goal in 5 games to show for it. Over 19 and a half minutes a night, Stamkos is a big-time buy low for me. Justin Faulk, next up, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5. 23 minutes, 45 seconds average time on ice in that stretch here. I'm kind of unconcerned for the most part with Justin Faulk here. I know people are enjoying what Philip Broberg's doing, but I'm not convinced that Broberg is going to take Faulk's power play time anytime soon. If that happened, then yeah, I'd be more concerned. But overall, I'm not feeling any type of way about it at the moment. Faulk does have 4 points in 6 games, so you just have to go back 1 extra game, and then it doesn't look so bad. It's just kind of the numbers evening out, in my opinion. And I do think that we can expect Faulk to be, as long as he's on the power play 1, I think we should expect him to be around 50 points with good bangs, good peripherals, all of that. And that should be good enough to continue to be on your roster. Back to the comments. Woo Says, hi, if Hagel's not on the list, can you talk about him, please? Haven't had time to listen to the flagship show. Not sure if you talked Power Play 1. No, we haven't talked about Hagel in a little bit, so we can definitely do that here. Did see that he was practicing up on the top power play. Doesn't look like they've had a power play in the game against Toronto that's currently ongoing. But yeah, it sounds like he's getting back on the top power play unit. The Darren Radish experiment may be over finally. Yeah, obviously that's good for Hagel. I am still a little bit reticent about how long that may last. They've tried anybody and everybody over there, including Darren Radish, over Brandon Hagel so far. Maybe if he gets a power play goal tonight, then he can start to work his way towards cementing that role. But that role is certainly not cemented at the moment. And so you kind of have to value the player as if that role is not cemented. And he's still, like, his best case scenario is still playing on a second line alongside Rielly and Mitchell Chaffee right now. That's not great, even straight deployment. So, yeah, I'm not that bullish on Hagel. I didn't really see the thesis for it preseason. I wasn't big on the player. I know he's got, like, he's individually a solid player, but if he's not getting the point Kucherov exposure, then you're really not getting much there. Power play 1 will help for sure, but it's probably not going to turn him into a big time stud. Michael says, 2 weeks into fantasy now. How are you feeling about the Kaprizov capital you took in all your leagues? Pretty solid start. Yep, feeling pretty good about it. I just felt really strongly that Kaprizov was going to be a dude this year. He's got 8 points so far. I think he could have more, but yeah, I mean, 8 points in 5 games, we take that. And yeah, the Wild should have some more games here after only having 2 games last week. I know they have a good playoff schedule, so as long as I can make it there, I should get the full benefit of that with Kaprizov. So yeah, I'm still in on Kaprizov for sure. How can you not be with 8 points in 5 games to start the year and 22 minutes, 35 seconds average time on ice? Yeah, that'll pay the bills. Jackson asks, I have 4C only, need to get rid of one. McKinnon, Eichel, Malkin, Hischier. All are top 20 in the league right now. Same scoring as the Fantasy Puck Creator League. Not sure who to try and move. Ideas? If you can sell high on Malkin, that would be the one I would do. Otherwise, I mean, yeah, maybe you can sell high on Eichel. Eichel does show out well in that league as well. I'm trying to think who you can get the biggest return for, most likely. I would start by shopping Malkin, and then I would move to Eichel probably. I don't think you're going to get value for Hischier unless somebody's like a Devils fan. Michael said, do we mention that Blake's PLD projection not looking good? Why do you have to do him like that? He's not even here right now. I honestly haven't checked on what Dubois got going on. He's got just 2 assists so far, 4 games only. Yeah, not a player that I've been super into. He is on the list here, so we will get there. Andy says, sorry if I already talked about him. What to do with Zib? Kind of been underwhelming. He was underwhelming, but he's been not too bad as of late. We could throw him in the sheet here at the end. What do we got out of Mika Zibanejad? I mean, he's gotten the benefit of some empty net stuff. Oh yeah, I changed this sheet already. Mika Zibanejad, I will have to look up the stats elsewhere, but I'm just a little bit worried still about Zibanejad. He hasn't, even in the games where he's scoring points, like he has the one game where he has 5 shots, right? In the other 4 games combined, he has 3 total shots. That's just not going to do it. He gets an assist against Toronto. One of those was empty net. He gets 2 assists against Toronto. One of those was empty net. So the overall counting stats look okay, 5 points in 5 games. But the way that it's coming is pretty concerning to me. And I think, yeah, if I had him, I would be pretty interested in moving off of him for any kind of value. All right, back to the list. Talking about Evan Bouchard here, another player we talked about on the flagship show. Yeah, you see these numbers if you're watching on YouTube. This guy is right up there with the top of the league in terms of defensemen generating chances. No concerns with Evan Bouchard. I would absolutely consider him a huge buy low at the moment if you can get it done. Adam Fantilli, 2 goals, no assists in his last 5 games, up over 18 minutes average time on ice. He's been ticking up and up and up, which is obviously what we want to see. the last 2 games here, 17.49, but then 22.04 in the 3-1 loss to Minnesota. Underlying stats are not great. 144th in shots per 60 is the best number. 356th individual scoring chances for per 60. That's not great. The lines that he's been put out there with are not great either. So that's obviously of some concern. In the last game, he played with Zach Aston Reese and Justin Danforth. That's just truly painful. And they're, for some reason, not even putting him on the top power play unit. I think this is a really talented player, but I don't think he's super valuable at this exact moment. It's really just a question of, can you hold him waiting for the correct moment to come along? I do think that'll come along. I've mentioned this before, but Dean Evason did kind of do a similar thing where Matt Boldy was an up-and-coming young player, correctly identified that he was a guy he needed to get more ice time to. He did, and Boldy took off, and the rest is history. I think he'll do something similar here with Fantilli. Maybe that's already starting with that 22-minute game the other night. Could be. So I don't want to drop Fantilli, but I think you have to be a little bit realistic about the fact that he's just not playing with guys that are going to score a lot of points. I really want to see him get more time with the top power play unit. That's the biggest thing that we can see right now. That would really help him out. Michael says that Matthews just got a power play goal. That's sweet. Means my Tim Hortons streak stays alive. If you know, you know. Nylander gets an assist there as well. Good stuff. All right. Back to the list. Dylan Cousins, 2 assists last 5 games. Mentioned this in the flagship show. So definitely some of the people in the Discord server not checking out the flagship show before they're putting the names in here. Yeah, I consider Cousins to be a pretty big buy low. He's been getting solid minutes, just under 18 minutes there. Underlying stats look good. 39th in individual scoring chances for per 60 is the big one that I'm looking at right now. And top power play, seems like he's sticking there despite, Owen Power coming on there, Jason Zucker coming on there. It looks like Cousins is going to stick. Brian Rust next up, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5, skating almost 20 minutes a night, 38th in shots per 60, 15th individual scoring chances for per 60, 32nd Corsi for per 60, 29th on ice scoring chances for per 60. All the under the hood numbers look great for Brian Rust. I'm not worried about him whatsoever. I would consider him a pretty big buy low at the moment as well. Svechnikov, Andrei Svechnikov, that is, not Evgeny. 1 goal, 3 assists, 4 points in 4 games so far. Just over 17 minutes average time on ice. The underlying numbers are just tremendous for Svechnikov so far. 6th in shots per 60, 4th in individual scoring chances for per 60, 6th on ice Corsi for per 60, 8th on ice scoring chances for per 60. Yeah. Really good stuff. Really good returns from Svechnikov so far. You should absolutely be ecstatic if you have him. You could try to trade for him. Still, the average time on ice there is not great, and that's always going to be the thing with a Rod Brind'Amour coach team. You just can't expect that Svechnikov is going to get 19-plus minute treatment at any point this season. All right, let's move over. Morgan Rielly, back to Leafs defense. 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5. Don't believe he's gotten a point on either of Leafs goals here so far. 21 and a half minutes average time on ice, 52nd shots per 60. That's okay. Yeah, okay numbers for sure. But getting off the top power play in favor of Oliver Ekman-Larsson. And that's going to be the key thing, right? That's going to be the thing that really holds down Rielly's production. I think he's good enough to get, to like 50 points without that. Be a 50-point defenseman, but he's much more like, he's now like much more in like the Devon Taves, Thomas Harley, Matthias Ekholm kind of range without the top power play, right? So you just have to adjust your expectations at this point. I don't know that Ekman-Larsson will make this stick all year long. It's probably a pretty solid chance that Rielly gets power play 1 again at some point throughout the season. I think people tend to see something like this and they think, oh, this is just the way it is now. It's going to last it's going to be this way for the entire season. More than likely, the power play will go through another cold stretch at some point and Rielly will get back on the top unit. It just seems to be the way these things go more often than not. So you could hold out waiting for that. I think he's definitely rosterable. You don't have to drop Morgan Rielly just because he doesn't have top power play, but definitely it stings if you drafted him early. Lake Effect says, thoughts on Seth Jones? You think he's got a 50-plus point season in him this year? I think it's possible. I had him projected for, well, let's just check what I had him projected for. We have the technology. We could do such a thing. I had him projected for 41 points on the year. I was being conservative intentionally with that. Um, I think it's possible. I don't know that it's the most likely scenario, but it's definitely within reach, and I think it's closer to the range of possibility than I thought at the beginning of the season. Michael says, thank you for allowing me to look at Alex Tuch. Think I'll have a great season. No problem. Michael asks, OEL or Jake Wallman, rest of season? I think at this point, you have to go with OEL just because of the upside. Being on a top power play like that, it's just so valuable for fantasy. I think you have to go there. I think you have to stick with OEL. Jake Wallman, I think, will be solid on this season. Like, you'll add it up at the end of the season, and you'll be like, yeah, he was a rosterable player all season long. He was a good part of my lineup, but OEL has the potential to do more than that, and so I think you just got to value that upside. All right, back to the list. Owen Tippett, another player we talked about, Blake and I did yesterday. 1 assist his last 5 games, second in the league in shot attempts for 60. So that's good. But again, this is a player who had just routinely struggles to convert at any sort of high rate. So he's going to get his shots. He's going to get his shot attempts. That's all going to look really good under the hood with Owen Tippett. But I just don't think he's ever going to be a player who shoots more than 12% even in a good year. Yeah, I think you just have to expect that Tippett will have another solid year where he puts up a ton of shots, hits a bunch of people, but probably 30 goals is probably the absolute max. Overall, I'm not concerned that he's not producing at this exact moment, but I'm also just not overly bullish on him rest of season to just pop off and score 40 goals this year. We do get down to Pierre-Luc Dubois now. As I mentioned, 2 assists in 4 games to open the year, just over 17 minutes average time on ice. The underlying metrics are atrocious. 361st in shots per 60, 322nd, I should say, in individual scoring chances for per 60. On ice numbers a little better. 93rd Corsi for per 60, 118th scoring chances for per 60. Yeah, he's on the top power play. That part is obviously good for Pierre-Luc Dubois, but that's honestly the best thing I can say about Pierre-Luc Dubois at the moment. I mean, I guess he's getting some of that sweet Tom Wilson exposure that everybody wants. Maybe that's the best thing I can say about Pierre-Luc Dubois at the moment, but yeah, not a player I was high on at the beginning of the season, not a player I'm high on now. Next up, Chris Letang, 2 goals, no assists in his last 5 games, nearly 23 minutes a night. Underlying metrics are nothing to write home about, and honestly a little bit more towards the not great side of things than the don't write home about side of things. But he's maintaining the top power play deployment there in Pittsburgh, and that means something for sure. He's always been a good hit block kind of guy, bangers cats kind of guy. And now if you're going to give him some power play time on top of that, theoretically, the ceiling should be pretty high here for Chris Letang. And overall, yeah, I think you're really happy if you have him. I don't know that I'm necessarily going out to acquire him right now because I'm not convinced that this is the power play unit that the Penguins use all season long. It's just not typical to see a top power play with 2 defensemen on it. So I'm always going to be a little wary of that sticking for any extended length of time. So that's where I'm at on Chris Letang. Thomas Hertl, 1 goal, 1 assist, 2 points in his last 5, 19 minutes a night, 275th in shots per 60. That's not great, but 82nd in individual scoring chances for per 60 is a little better. On ice numbers, kind of middle of the pack. Nothing too crazy there. I do like Hertl. He's playing at even strength in the last game anyway with Dorofeyev and Howden. He is on the top power play. I'm just checking to see if they made any switches. No, they didn't make any switches to lines in practice today, so it is still the same. Hertl, I think, is going to be just fine, but just fine in a 55 to 60 point way. and that's probably the best that you can expect from him. Yeah, especially if these are the line mates that he's going to get. It's just tough to project any kind of ceiling for him if really the only ceiling portion where he's getting exposed to really high end players is on the power play. So that's where I'm at with Hertl. Back to the comments. Michael says, how are you doing in the Creators League? How are you feeling about your team there? Feeling pretty good. I think I'm maybe like third in fantasy points for after 2 weeks. 1-1, lost by like 5 points yesterday. Went down to the wire. Ross Colton actually did me in, which is kind of funny because obviously I love Ross Colton. But yeah, I'm not too worried about it. I have a good team, doing well in the points for. It's still very early, obviously, so a lot of things could happen. Things could go sideways or things could go well from here. But in the early going, I feel like the team is strong. Steve says, Nate, you're talking about Tavares earlier. Would you take him or Malkin rest of season in Yahoo Standard Cats League? In a Yahoo Standard Cats League, I think you have to go Malkin at this point. Yeah, just deployment based mostly, and the early returns. But I'm not like super confident about that. Yeah, I think you have to go Malkin, but I'm not super confident. That's where I'm landing. Michael, let me know. Nylander scored again. Love it. Nobody, but nobody does atrocious better, Nate. Thanks, Mr. C. All right. Back to the list. Nick Foligno, 2 goals, 2 points in his last 5 games, getting some top line, top power play exposure to the Connor Bedard show there in Chicago. Almost 19 minutes a night, 91st in shots per 60, 100th in individual scoring chances for per 60, not too shabby. 213th Corsi for per 60, 164 in scoring chances for per 60, not as good. Yeah, Foligno to me is just a streamer. That's who he is at this point. Nothing more. Another month and he'll be down on the third line or something like that. I don't think you can reasonably project Foligno for some sort of season-long upside, but while he's playing alongside Bedard, if it fits with your team, if you get him on some off nights, absolutely you can pick Nick Foligno up and feel good about it. Drake Batherson, 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in his last 5 games here, 17.5 minutes a night, up to 67th in shots per 60 in that time frame, 123rd individual scoring chances for per 60, and also on ice scoring chances for per 60, looking good at 45th there. I think I mentioned with Blake there in the waiver wire show that we saw some lines where he's playing with Giroux and Norris, and then they scored a bunch of points with that line on Saturday. So I am pretty interested in what's going on there. Obviously, Batherson also on the top power play, so he's getting some sweet exposure there. Batherson's been a player I've been into for a long time. Definitely not out on him at this point. But it does seem like he's never going to get that like true line one exposure alongside Stützle and Tkachuk, which would really be the way that I could foresee him getting another level to his game. So realistically, I think he's probably like a 30 goal, 65 point guy. That's probably where it's most likely that he lives on the season. Getting to the end of the list here, Brock Nelson, 2 goals, 3 assists, his last 5, over 19 minutes a night. On the individual stats here are looking crisp, 20 shots per 60, 20th in shots per 60, I should say, and 23rd in individual scoring chances for per 60. On ice numbers not as good, and yeah, this is kind of the problem with the Islanders, right? They have Palmieri and Siplikov on that line there, and that's okay, but it's definitely not fantastic for a guy of Brock Nelson's talents in terms of line mates. And he hasn't been getting top power play, which is also obviously of significant concern. Yeah, I don't think anything has changed in terms of the way I view Brock Nelson, the player, but I do think that it's unlikely that we see some real high ceiling for Nelson this year, just given how they've been willing already to not play him on a top power play. They tried some really weird stuff in practice today with the Islanders power play, like Dobson was not on the same unit as Barzal. Dobson and Horvat were together, but Barzal and Nelson were together. Yeah, really weird stuff, and I don't know how much stock to put into these lines, to be honest. I really don't. Maybe they're just going to true 50-50 it from here on out, and it's just going to be catastrophic for everybody's fantasy value. That's a worst case scenario. I think more likely they go back to something similar to what they were doing before. Maybe Nelson gets in there instead of Siplikov moving forward. That's the best case scenario, obviously, for Nelson. But you have to bake in that kind of presupposition now that he may just not be that fourth forward on that power play. We got a question from Michael. How do you think Nelson's deployment changed with Duclair being out? I don't think it'll change at all. I don't think that really affects him. Definitely it affects guys like Anders Lee and potentially Maxim Siplikov being the other left wingers in the top 9 there. But really, I don't think Nelson's deployment will change whatsoever. Igor Chinakhov, I should say there is a scenario in which Nelson is the replacement on a true top power play unit for Duclair. That's really the only case that you could see. Igor Chinakhov still doing the thing. 3 goals, 7 points his last 5 games, over 19 minutes a night, 44th shots per 60, 12th in on-ice Corsi, 4 per 60, 35th on-ice scoring chances, 4 per 60. Absolutely loving what Igor Chinakhov's bringing to the table right now, getting the deployment, getting the stats, getting the underlying stats. It's all lining up for him, and I'm here for it. I don't think that he's going to be, more than a point per game player for the full season, but we're seeing a ceiling that we didn't think was possible for him right now. And so that's exciting for sure. Do I think it slows down? Yes, I do. Do I think that he's potentially a rest of season hold? Yes, I do. Michael says, Vasi got pulled. Hashtag 0G. Love to see it. Armin asks, would you drop Beniers or Pospisil for Zeri, Frost, Monahan, Pinto, Dubois, or should I keep them? Yeah, I think I would drop both of those for any of the first 3. Zeri, Frost, Monahan. I would drop Beniers or Pospisil for any of those 3 personally. All right. I think we've made it to the end of the list. I did intentionally go pretty fast because it was a long list, but we made it in good time. I think we can call it. I think I've captured all the comments here. We've captured the major elements of the Puzzling Players requests from the Discord server. While you're here, if you could like the video, like the live stream, it really does help with the algorithm, I'm told. If you could subscribe, ring the bell for notifications, all that is good for the algorithm as well. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, would love to see a rating or review. That would be awesome. Trying to pump those numbers up even more. But other than that, I think that's going to be all that I've got for this episode. Hopefully it brought you some value. Helped you get a little bit better at fantasy hockey today. All the advanced stats you heard and saw today came from Natural Stat Trick, which is a terrific free resource. Many thanks to the band They're There for supplying the music for the podcast. Be sure to check out their Spotify as well. That's it, folks. Much love.